Well, can you guess which game this is? It's WWE 2K14 for the Xbox 360. Of course, this was 30 years of WrestleMania, single player. Very similar, as you can see, to 2K15 and 2K16 on the same system. Of course, this game came out in 2013. Probably one of my favorite wrestling games of all time, aside from the classic Fire Pro Wrestling series on the Dreamcast and PlayStation 2. I feel that 2K15 and 2K16, insofar as they're similar to this game, are very good, but in some places things have been changed, and for the most part I'm either indifferent to the changes or feel that they detract somewhat from the experience overall. Here I've chosen to mute the sound, but of course that's because the music may trigger a copyright claim on the video, and that's annoying. Of course you have the exciting red menus. Now I'm told that WWE 13, which preceded this, is very similar and was considered by many to be sort of the pinnacle of the development of the series on this generation of console. Now I never actually played 13. There are some improvements in this version over it, and of course the 2K represents 2K Games, which took over the series, the engine, after THQ quit or was disbanded or whatever from the series. As you can see, the load times are a little long. It's the old WWE logo, which to many represents the PG era, following the Attitude Era. So here we'll take a look at the modes, very familiar to you all by now. This is, of course, offline, single player. Of course, now the Slobberknocker had to be unlocked. Tournaments exactly the same as in the other two games. Mixed gender tag tends to be rather glitchy online, although I'm told some of it has to do with the use of save editors to modify characters. Often the matches would desync, causing both sides basically to split, and each one to have their own game where, oh, I thought I won, no, I thought I won. Kind of annoying. I don't see it happen as much in the later games. So your basic areas. Now this is the real highlight, the 30 years of WrestleMania, and of course I've unlocked quite a bit of things here. Single player takes you through these different eras of history. Of course this is all single player, and I've actually done it a couple of times, but here I haven't quite unlocked everything. Beat the Streak, where you fight the Undertaker. Videos. I would say this is much more interesting than what we got in 2K15 with the NXT stuff, or the showcase, and then in 16 with the Austin 316 adventure. So you have the timeline, and of course the different eras, and you have to complete objectives. And of course the trophies represent you unlocked everything. The checkmark just means you just won it, because you can win these matches. Of course you'll control basically whichever character ended up winning in history. Of course this does not represent every WrestleMania main event, many were left out for political reasons or whatnot, because of bad relations with some of these persons with the WWE company. Obviously the Chris Benoit matches were left out because of his sad history. Kurt Angle, of course, not on the best terms. His matches were left out. This match was glitchy for me, so I basically had to redo it. So, kind of skip ahead a little bit. I have actually completed all of these, but just not on this particular save. So you can have as many saves as you want, as many as you have flash drives, which I have many. Of course, the streak mode, kind of its own game mode. This, I think, was very exciting. Of course, you have to try to beat the Undertaker. This is one of my scores. Not the best ever, but decent enough. Here's you defend the streak, basically a slobber knocker, where just wrestlers just keep coming in and attacking you. And they get, I'm not sure if they get stronger and stronger, or if they're just all weaker than you, but you just try to have to survive as long as you can. Statistics just shows like how well you did against the Undertaker, and this victims just shows people he beat historically. Of course, the statistics. Even though WWE 2K14 has been shut down, the online service no longer active after November 1st, 2015, which is unfortunate. I think it's rather unfair to the fans. You can still operate these leaderboards. You can still upload your high scores online, apparently. So let's see. Or maybe I spoke too soon. Well, it is loading. Yes, indeed. Every week. So there's some examples. Usually it's in the 100,000s. These are people who have beaten the Undertaker. And it goes on. Different characters. So they have done it with some classics. And we have up here, defend the streak. So how long you last, points. And let's see, leaderboards. Of course, we'll load these up. Of course, you can still go to the WWE shop and buy DLC. Again, these high scores. Players. WWE fan. And so it goes. Of course, now the Xbox Live, even though it is shown there, you'll see in a minute that unfortunately it's dead, quite dead, killed by 2K. Of course, you could play against an AI team in player match. In ranked match, you had to have a human player, at least one human player on each team, to avoid cheating. Of course, the special referee matches could only be played in player match. Not available. Try again later. Unfortunately, it will not be back. Very sad. And X-Link Kai is no help because it was an Xbox Live exclusive. No LAN support of any kind. No system link. Go down to options. Tutorials. In-game manual. So this is all the same as in the later games. Let's check out a few things here. Oops. Abilities. It tells you about each of these abilities. These are, you can choose them for each of your characters to kind of enhance their overall playing style, give you a little bit of an edge here and there. And this is the main one. Resiliency gives you an extra chance to kick out of a pin or a submission hold. Of course, lag can render it useless, but it nevertheless is generally helpful. Comeback basically gives you a chance to do 3 more hits on your opponent with a special move. Of course, it gives the opponent 3 chances to reverse it. Your luchador type moves, jumping out of the ring, little surprise pin, and of course escaping from the ring. And of course this crawling to the ropes and escaping from the ring doesn't work in Elimination Chamber, but any other time there's a ring it does work. Okay, attributes. This just explains what each of the attributes are and each of the characters. Grapple power and so forth, submission. Basically, adrenaline is the old tired meter as you're running, but it does regenerate pretty quickly. Whereas in the other games, you'd get tired just from doing anything, and you had to hold the button down to get your health back, or your energy back. It was very annoying. So these are just more options. And it actually hides the HUD, the heads-up display, from you. There is manual targeting, but I've gotten used to it. I've gotten used to the system. You will see when you do damage to a body part, it will briefly flash a little outline of the character's body showing the damage. Of course, if it's black, it hasn't been damaged. If it's yellow, it's light damage. Orange, it's medium damage, and then red, it's critical damage. If a body part is red and you do a submission hold on it, you can very easily cause them to tap out, as they say, give up. Also, damage to certain body parts causes them to run slower or get dizzy easier and so forth. There's actually a 50 plus, it's actually 57-page manual, extended manual in PDF form online. Now, I haven't found it yet for 15 and 16. They just have these very, very short, very abbreviated manuals. But that manual is very helpful. The one that came with the game was almost useless. Basically, it just told you the controls, the basic controls. X does this, A does that, Y does this. Y is basically your special move. B is pin, or Irish whip, as they say, to throw them to the ropes. Y is your, of course, signature finisher move. X is a strike. A is grapple. And various times you'll have to hit buttons fast to escape from a submission hold or to increase it. Holding down A can do a submission hold on your opponent. Holding down X does a strong strike. Moving the left joystick moves your character around. Moving the D-pad does taunts, which generate momentum. Of course, you get enough momentum, you get a signature. That eventually turns into a finisher, or you can do it manually to store a finishing move. You can store up to 3 finishing moves. Of course, you can set it so that you have infinite, but that's only offline. And then the right joystick is used at various times for various things. Generally, though, it's to, if you're grabbing an opponent with A, you can spin them around, change it so that you're holding their head or their arm. If their body's on the ground, you can use the joystick to flip the body over, flip it back, so forth. If you hold both triggers, you can what's called dragging. You hold the person's head and you kind of walk around with them, leading them around. It's very annoying. Sometimes it's done to annoy your opponent, other times it's just to get them in a good position. And it can't be countered. You basically have to wait until a certain amount of time before you can attempt to reverse. Now, the right trigger is the reverse button to reverse strikes and holds. Certain ones are harder than others, of course, and it depends on your stats. The left trigger, holding it down, allows you to run, which of course depletes your run meter, which then regenerates with time. So that's your basic stuff. And clicking one of the joysticks, I'm Not sure if the left or the right does manual targeting to switch from opponents, but otherwise it does it automatically. The left button at the top, the left flipper, whatever you want to call it, used to get in and out of the ring. Of course, to climb the turnbuckles, you just run into them, basically. You can use B to remove the turnbuckle cover, if you're positioned correctly. The right button, or right flipper, use it to grab weapons out from under the ring, pick weapons up, drop weapons. Of course, a weapon will result in a disqualification, a DQ, unless it's Extreme Rules or some other mode where that's allowed. So always check the rules with the start button. Yes, that's your basic controls, but what I just told you is basically pretty much all what the manual tells you. And the rest you have to figure out for yourself, or buy a guide, or look on Game Facts, or something like that. So save manager, unlockables, of course. Now your music jukebox, now in 2K15 you just have these pop songs, but in this game you have the entrance music, theme music of all these different wrestlers, and of course you can listen to it in the menus, or you can disable it all and listen to your own music, as I do, since I've gotten kind of tired of it, hearing it. No pop songs, as in 16 and 15. 16 gave you both. Now with the visual presentation, you can change how the HUD looks, but you can't make it appear all the time as you can in the next-gen versions of 15 and 16, or in the old versions of these games, like SmackDown vs. Raw 2006, unfortunately. You just have to keep track of how much damage you're doing. You just can't see it all the time. Now the shop should still be active, where you can purchase the DLC, downloadable content, which is mostly just alternative attires, but it has some legend characters. Of course, the Ultimate Warrior. The online pass, this was the bane of many players' existence. If you bought the game used, of course it's useless now, but if you bought the game used, you had two choices. You could either use a 7-day free trial to play online matches, but have no access to community creations, and if on top of that you needed, I think at least Xbox Live Gold. I don't think Xbox Live Silver, the free version, was sufficient. Could be wrong about that. But you needed gold and the online pass to be able to access community creations, which was at least half the game, to get at least 100 created wrestlers and 50 created arenas and 10 created textures. You could also download screenshots and stories, special moves, movesets, things like that. Of course, you had the Undertaker, Biker Taker, American Badass, as they say, the Accelerator, make things get unlocked quicker, and you can change the attributes up to 100. Of course, then you had like a free character to entice you to buy these packs, these various alternate attires and a few extra characters. Mr. Perfect and X-Pac are also in there. Summer Rae with her wrestling gear. Virgil. So the legends, here you had Jake the Snake Roberts and Bruno Sammartino, Dusty Rhodes. So anyway, that was the season pass. Of course, since this was the first one that I got of these 3 games, I did buy all of the DLC. Not sure I'll be doing that for the other 2 games. There just doesn't seem to be much. I can always go back to this game and enjoy it. Just not online, unfortunately. So you can edit things. Options, of course. My WWE, or WWE Shop. Okay, then there's Universe Mode, which is basically like your general manager. Some people really get into this. I've done it for a few achievements, but not extensively. Of course, it's basically like you're running a show. You have to play Money in the Bank, basically a 6-man ladder match. So you can customize it to your liking, compete for titles and things. Kind of interesting, like you're running the show. Because you can create your own fictional promotions. Just do a little random match here, kind of show you. Oh, but first we'll show you the characters. This looks like Randy Orton to me, don't you think? In later games it looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger. So let's see, we always start off with John Cena and The Undertaker. So here's your roster. Of course you can see that the numbers have changed in the later games. It's a very distinctive style. Most of these characters have only one attire. A lot of the legend characters have multiple attires because they appeared in WrestleMania as different different attires of themselves, different versions of themselves, whatever you want to call it, costume changes. Oh yes, of course. Skipping around here. Sorry about that. Getting into the legends, retro versions. Of course, it's interesting to see, you know, these are considered retro. Of course, many years have gone by, to be fair. Mr. McMahon. Now, Mick Foley is here. Mankind is actually a manager. You have to use a save editor to hack your profile, basically, to make him playable, or use a Community Creations version. Here you have managers, divas, yes, the downloadable characters, Biker Taker. Of course, Ultimate Warrior looks like he was ported directly from one of these other games, very over-the-top, kind of cartoonish-looking version of himself with giant, you know, massive hair, a big mane. An interesting interpretation, but I think in later games he looks a little bit more like he does in real life on the show most of the time. In 16 he's got these really large eyes, looks a little strange, but otherwise very similar to how he should look. Of course the graphics in the next gen versions are different. Get many alternate attires for these characters, a few new ones. Steiner, Peaky Langston, Fandango, Bella Twins, Dusty Rhodes, Bruno Sammartino, Rick Rude, Jake the Snake, Virgil. So there you go. And the servers are split in two, so you can have Undertaker and the Ultimate Warrior, but you'll be on a separate set of servers from the DLC or the Season Pass servers. And of course any custom creations made with the Season Pass are not usable by you unless you have it. The Season Pass server was completely separate. Of course you could get around this by having a removable drive, flash drive or hard drive, and put your DLC on it, boot your system up without it, inserted, and you could play on the larger server that had the people that didn't have the DLC. But anyway, it's all shut down, so that's kind of moot now. But at the time, that's how we had to do it for the last 2 years. Of course, these are just some characters I've custom ones I've either created or downloaded. Of course, there were so many. I had hundreds, literally hundreds of characters. Of course, the classic female wrestlers. Some lesser known, some much more famous. Of course, Kana, I believe one of my last matches was played with her. Of course, now known as Asuka in NXT. A lot more people know who she is now in America, and I'm fine with that. Amada, of course, these are all made by fans. Some of these are scans of renders, they call them, of the actual wrestler. More closely mimic the game profiles, and others just the game model. Remember, these don't come with the game. You'd have to download them. Nowadays, you'd have to figure out a way to get them off the web if someone has uploaded them, or use what's called a formula. There's videos and there's text files like cause.ws, a website. It tells you basically how to create these characters. Of course, the custom textures you would have to do without, but everything else you could create yourself. You can import photos to take the place of these renders. So it's just an example of some of the characters I got. So as you can see, I'm a fan of women's wrestling, and the women that come in the game, not a large selection, so I was able to fill out that roster quite well. Of course, you don't get a nice grid selection for them, but nevertheless, you get a decent list. Amazing Kong. Here she's recently retired from wrestling, unfortunately. Too many injuries and, of course, maybe family concerns as well. Just speculating there. A few male wrestlers from TNA. One of the most popular creations, Rob Van Dam. Many variations of him. Also, Freddy Krueger was very popular. So there, those are all downloaded. Now let's go to Divas. So as you can see, rather pathetic selection. Of course, AJ Lee, very popular. Yes. Lita, very popular. So we'll do our little random match here. Just to show you the game here. Gameplay, rather. This is offline, of course, because I can't show you online. It doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. Of course, you can... The entrance, you can change the match pace from normal, epic, quick. Select your arena. Now you can notice the huge selection of WrestleMania arenas, of course, than the regular ones. Comparing it to the other games. Here's the custom arenas. And you'll notice when you select one, the name appears down here. So these are ones, of course, that I downloaded, a few that I created, but mostly downloaded. And notice how quickly the pictures appear, and they kind of stay there. Whereas in the other games, they tend to load a lot more, it seems like. These big loading spinning circles. Sometimes it has to load again. Custom arenas. Those, there's no text label. And there you go. I'm not going to try really hard here. I'm just going to kind of show you what the gameplay looks like for 2K14, the Xbox 360. Of course, there's the intro. AJ Lee coming skipping out. Of course, now the wife of CM Punk, also on the outs with WWE, no longer a member there. Apparently, he was doing something with mixed martial arts or something of that sort. I'm not sure how that's going for him. Of course, Natalia, Natty Neidhart, from the famous Hart family of wrestling, which Bret Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart were members. And here's your basic, of course, the bar is on by default. You can always turn that off. Of course, look how small AJ Lee is compared to Natty. believe I have it set on legend difficulty. There's the reversal. What that buzzing you're hearing is the rumble pack, as they call it, the vibration. Yep, on legend there's not such a pushover. So here we have the weapons. She's going to get the baseball bat. She always goes for that. Notice it's not black like in 15 and 16, just because they put Sting in the game to give him his black baseball bat. Oops, hit the wrong button there. The kick out, and that's it. Pretty basic, but much more strategic than some of the old games in the series. As expansive and interesting as the SmackDown games were, Here Comes the Pain and all that, it was a lot more button mashing, a lot less timing with moves. Of course, the Shield. Been the bane of my existence in the later games. In this one it was much more certain individual, certain Randy Orton. But anyway, there's your basic game. I think this is quite an excellent game if you have a chance to play it. 30 Years of WrestleMania is well worth it. If you find a way to get the creations off the internet, even if you have to hack the profile with a save editor, go for it. But basically this game lives on in 15 and 16 on the Xbox 360, but unfortunately with some things removed. Notice the creation suite here. Superstar threads, which unfortunately is just a few colors on the default roster. Wrestlers. Entrance. Moveset. Special move, you can create new special moves and edit them. You can't do that in 15 or 16. Story, can't do that in 15 or 16. Arena Championship, which is a belt, logo. And of course in this game you can have, you can rip a CD and use it as a custom soundtrack, user playlist for your wrestlers, for created wrestlers, or any wrestler really. Rip a CD to your Xbox 360 hard drive and listen to that music. In online matches, other players couldn't hear it unless you held your microphone up to the speaker. It's the same way in 16, but in 15 you can't do that. You can only use the pre-selected music. But this is an excellent game, and if the servers were still online, I would still be playing it. Definitely. Excellent game. There were some glitches, there were some bugs. Sometimes I'd get disconnected, sometimes the player animations would goof up. That's really no different than the newer games. There was a lot of cheating, a lot of online hacks, as they called them, moves that could teleport around the ring and hit you no matter what, couldn't be reversed, freeze pins, so you pin someone and they couldn't get out of it, and your character would just be stuck there. So if it was a multi-person match, like an elimination chamber, it would basically, the game would be ruined. But overall, most of the time, most players are very courteous. There were some sore losers out there, and of course some boosters, people who would collude with other players to get wins, give away points, like Hostility and Jarhead, a few others, some clan members mostly. But even putting all that aside, I think it was a great overall community. Many wrestling fans, many video game players, just seeking competition and fun. So I greatly enjoyed the little bit of less than a year that I played online, and the other months that I played offline. I wish I'd gotten into it sooner, and I wish 2K hadn't shut it down. I think if they kept it up, it would still be being played. But of course there would have been then more pressure to make the newer games better. instead of just recycling the same game with a new roster and a different single player. But there you go. If I could give it maybe 5 stars, probably not 5, but certainly 4 stars for sure. So there you go. Thanks for listening.